Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Domingo, if you please call the roll.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Reed. Here. Brown.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
French.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. Are there any council member comments this evening? Okay. Seeing none, public comments. Persons addressing the City Council shall limit their comments to agenda items only and to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum and state your name and address. Are there any public comments on the agenda this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to items for individual discussion, or item for individual discussion. Item A, approve selection process for interim city manager. So I called the meeting, and well, is there a motion to do that? Is there a motion? So we can is there a motion so we can discuss it?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. So last night the council accepted the resignation of our current city manager, and we have a date when she will be leaving us, but we also have to make a provision until we can have a more thorough selection process of interim city management. What I'd like to ask the council to consider is to, this evening, there's the manager job description that's in front of you. What I'd like to do is, I know in previous years we've had kind of internal selections, and I'm not opposed to that, but what I would like to do is to have it posted. And I know that there are, as I say every time this has happened, the MML maintains a list of interim managers, and so I think it would be a good idea and a fair idea, and will present the city with, I guess, a good, or at least the opportunity to receive external offers as well. So I know that with current positions, there's a 5 business day posting for city positions, and so when I consulted with the attorney today, I think with that was regarding the employees that are subordinate to the manager. So this is a kind of a different situation, but what I'm proposing is that we post it for internal, external application, but then also we can kind of discuss the length of time, whether we say by the end of this week, or if we say maybe within that 5 days, so that would maybe run Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday of next week. So that's what I'm asking the council to consider. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. How long do you think it would take for us to appoint an interim city manager? And how long do you think it would take for us to appoint a permanent city manager?
The interim, what I would expect is, if let's say we do the standard 5, we could do shorter than that. But let's say we have the deadline, the 5 business days, so the deadline would be next Tuesday. So we could probably meet either on Wednesday or Thursday of next week to review and make a decision. That depends on if we decide to go with MML, you know, how we decide to select a search consultant. So I think that it depends on that. So, Councilmember French, oh, excuse me, Barnes.
I would like to see a seamless process. I would not like to advertise for external interim, because we would ultimately be training someone to keep the ship afloat when we have internal past experience personnel and people on board right now who are actively working with the city manager, and we have an assistant city manager and administrative staff. I have no problem going with the MML for the permanent and going the external, internal search, but right now, the situation that the city of Albion is in, being progressive, we have some things on the table that our current city manager is working with, and our administration assisting her is will address in that situation.
Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm sitting here listening, and I'm not sure the 5 days. I'm thinking more of maybe 3 days, posting tomorrow and maybe closing Friday at 5 p.m. You know, I hear the sentiments of Councilmember Barnes and we know we have internal candidates who are capable. However, I think it's important to post the job to see who all may be interested internally and both externally. I think the process should be fair but expedient. We'll get interested people. We'll be able to look at their credentials and where they fit and who's the best fit. So I think the best decision for council would be to post the job, review the interested parties, and make the best decision. So that's my.
Councilmember Reed.
I kind of feel like Mr. Barnes because we've got an assistant city manager, and what's the use of having an assistant city manager if they're not going to step in when the actual manager is gone? And I would say that right now, I think that Stacy knows very well what a lot that is going on, that she has been with Cheryl and worked with Cheryl and followed through on things that's going on in the city to the place. She should know a lot about what we've got to do. And I think that we should aggressively get with MML and get a permanent. So I think we should notify them as soon as possible as to what we need to do so that we can do that. But I think until then, we should be able to go with what we have. If we get someone from out of Albion, that's out of our does not know what's going on in our government, they're not going to know what to do either. It's going to take them time to get up to speed as to what to do when we have someone who does.
Councilmember French, Councilmember Barnes.
I have a question for you, Mr. Mayor, and that is, have you made phone calls to individuals asking if they would be interested in acting as an interim city manager?
No.
So if no one knows about the fact that we're about to do an external search for an interim city manager, I fail to see how 3 days is sufficient time for any applicant who knew nothing about the process or the fact that it would be open to the outside would be able to prepare a carefully crafted application for an interim position that would last 6 to 8 weeks. And so I think that if you want to be fair, the question then becomes is how are you defining fair? Fair to an outside entity, you probably should of Albion, where we could have a seamless, as we have had in every other transition of city managers, having Chief Kipp or Tom Mead serve as our interim city manager to keep the ship floating, as Councilman Barnes said, is a very fair to our city process. It's one that has worked in the past, and I see us doing anything different than that as an attempt to change structures for no real reason. If it's worked in the past, why would we delay a process? We could take a motion right now, make a motion to appoint Stacy Levin or Scott Kipp or Tom Mead to be our interim city manager, we'd be done after discussion. And as it is, we're now going to take a week, maybe two, to come up with a process, to evaluate candidates, to invite them to an interview. You know, that's a fair search, and that seems to me to be a colossal waste of everybody's time. If it was a permanent city manager, I would feel strongly that that length of time would be required. But for someone who's going to sit in the position for 8 weeks, 6 weeks, it seems like a waste of time.
Councilmember Barnes, Brown, Councilmembers Barnes, Brown, and Spicer. Yeah.
I need some help on this. I just wanted to make sure that it was highlighted that Chief Kipp has done this 3 times before, I think?
No.
Twice.
Okay, at least twice. So I just want everyone to know that we do have experienced people at this transition situation.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. So in response to the comments, the 3-day suggestion was mine. I just threw it out there as a hypothetical. So while I've been sitting here, I've heard Tom Mead, Stacy, and Scott, which in my opinion is more reason to post it and allow interested people to throw their names in the hat. So we can see who's interested, first of all, and who's the best fit out of internal candidates or external candidates. But I do want to remind this council, and I will go on the record in saying, I know we have very capable individuals who can step in. But when we talk about fairness in the process, like I said, I've heard three different names in just this short conversation. So let's post it and let these people express their written interest in doing it so we can make a decision. I also want to remind council that, you know, just about a year ago, we passed a resolution to post jobs because the idea was we wanted to post jobs so people would know what's available. It doesn't have to be a 2-week, 5-day, 3-day, but it needs to be posted, in my opinion. So,
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilwoman Brown touched on a couple things that I was going to point out. However, I first would like to know, are there any restrictions with regard to posting? I mean, are we limited to 5 days, 10 days, or no? And secondly, as Councilwoman Brown indicated, I've heard several names. Do we know, in fact, if Stacy, Tom, and Kip are interested or would consider the position? I'd like to know that. And I also think that, I don't know, has anybody had any conversations with them about that? And lastly, as she said, I thought that we had, when we adopted a resolution, that we were to post jobs. That only applied to non-exempt employees or exempt employees, or both? That's my questions and concerns.
Okay, so in response, I think you can answer the resolution thing, and then I'll.
So a couple of people have referenced the resolution that was done, I want to say March of 2017, where this council decided that future job postings would be posted to the public. The way that was drafted, though, was it was kind of a policy directive to the manager. What I don't think, I think what it was tailored to do was for the subordinates of the manager. I don't think it really applies to the position of the manager itself, much like it doesn't really apply to the attorney because I'm not a subordinate of the manager, and so I think this council can go either way. You can post. I mean, I don't think there's any mandate for you to post the interim manager position. I don't think there's anything that says that you can't do it. So, I mean, I think you can go either way. But my point was, I don't think that particular resolution mandates you to post the manager's position because the way that was drafted, it was a policy directive to the manager.
Okay. And so what I think, just to, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't prevent us from having an internal selection. It just opens the possibility to more people because, you know, If you don't ask, the question's already, the answer's always going to be no if you don't ask. So it doesn't hamper internal candidates. Councilmember Barnes, or Councilmember Barnes and Spicer.
When we finish, never mind.
Well, my concern for the employees and staff of the city of Albion, I feel we would be sending a negative message per se by not selecting internally and posting it outside based on having someone who has filled in before in this transition and having capable people to do it. And yes, I did approach Stacy first, and I did approach Chief Kip and ask them would they be interested. I don't make the decision, but I have every right to ask them if they're interested. And I would tease Tom Mead about, you probably be the next city manager, jokingly. I did do that. However, organizational behavior and organizational culture here in Albion was at a very low before Dr. Mitchell came. She brought it to a very high level, and it's there now. We even give appreciation dinners to the employees based on their performance and their attitudes. I think we would be taking a step backwards if we went outside of our administration, the upper level staff. I have no problem with going to the MML for a permanent one, but just in this interim, I wouldn't want us to be divided. I just want it to be seamless. It's 8 weeks, and we have staff that's done it before. So what would be the rationale to go outside of that just for a transition period? Thank you.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. So then there is no restriction on posting. We could do it 3 days or 5 days or however we decided here. And my other question is with regard to salary. How would that work for interim candidates versus someone externally? I mean,
what I envision is there's a period in which we solicit internal, external candidates. We receive resumes. So it wouldn't be a long, interview process and all of that like we did in other cases, like on a Saturday. We look at resumes and we decide, maybe the top 2 people, have them come before us and make that decision. Usually, there's always going to have to be negotiation, whether this is an interim or even with a permanent replacement. You always negotiate compensation. So I think that once we've made that decision, like I said, in the past 2 instances, it's amounted to a weekly stipend to the interim. But that's something like I said, most selection. So, Councilmember Reed, French, and Brown.
So there is no set compensation already set for what would happen if we went within? No. Each time we've done that, we've negotiated
what the compensation was. So, Councilmember French.
That negotiation took less than a week. We compensated Chief Kip, I think, $1,000.
$500.
Extra for his regular salary to be the interim city manager. I can guarantee that an external candidate would cost us more. And so, I think that we are making, just like this meeting, instead of doing this yesterday, doing it today, we are just making more work for ourselves that we don't have to do. We have competent staff internally. We could make a resolution or a vote today to appoint, and we could pick one, and they would start the negotiations, and we'd be done at the end of next week. And so we are getting ourselves mired in a process we're going to spend as much time finding the interim, if we go through the process as recommended, as we will have an interim as our interim city manager. It's going to take us. You're going to want to have interviews. You're going to have to get the council who's going to be free on Saturdays. I'm not going to be free every Saturday. We have Easter coming in 2 weeks. it's just gonna take longer and it's unnecessary. What I hear is that you, Mayor Brown, and perhaps Mayor Pro Tem Brown, that you actually don't really want an internal candidate in this position, because your behavior intimates that, your behavior by being stuck to an idea of...
Point of order, Mayor.
I'm allowed my comments.
What's the point
He's
of order?
off the subject right now about thinking he's psychic and knowing what we're thinking. He's supposed to be talking about, we're talking about approving the selection process for an interim city manager, and he is off topic right now.
I disagree.
What specifically? I mean, just...
By our comments and whatever he said,
Okay.
body language, what we wish to
Okay.
have is off topic.
Okay, yeah, so if you could just keep it to, not my state of mind, I guess. Okay, Councilman Brown.
Thank you. So again, I just want to reiterate.
Oh, 1 second. Wait, whoa. Thank you. Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to reiterate that whoever is the selection will be council's decision, whether that's internally or externally. Again, I've heard multiple names, and nobody's put an interest in writing, which I think posting the job would allow those individuals to do. There was a question posed to you, Mayor, as to whether or not you had called individuals and solicited somebody to apply. So I'm curious, from conversations that I've heard, if Councilmember French has called and made promises to people or individuals for this interim position.
Councilmember Spicer, City Manager, and Dr. French.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that we all should slow down, take a step back. I think we're putting the cart before the horse. We don't need to go making assumptions. I think that if we were to post it interim, have a short period, allow the internal people to apply, then we determine why you don't want that person or why you prefer this person. We haven't even gotten there yet, and we're already, it's back and forth. And I think that we should slow it down and just, let's just handle this. Thank you. That's my comment.
City Manager.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, I think that everyone here can agree that you want the best outcome relative to the next step in regards to the transition. I also find that there are some processes and procedures that you're discussing here today. One of them is relative to the posting for the interim position. Standard practice is if you're going to post internally, that you do that first. Should there not be a qualified candidate identified, then you go externally. The reasoning behind that is that it raises unrealistic expectations for the external candidates if there's already an internal candidate who's most likely to be selected. Also, if you do it simultaneously, the internal candidates, if they truly aren't going to be given a fair hearing, that's a misrepresentation as well. So first, there needs to be reflection on, are you truly interested in an internal candidate? And if so, then the next logical step would be to post internally if that's how you want to approach it. But I would strongly recommend that before posting anything for anyone, whether internal or external, that you look at the job description, because it's woefully inadequate relative to the role that exists currently. Had anyone asked, I would have told you there are a number of things that are done and are required of the city manager for the city of Albion that are not reflected in this job description. There are a good 30 projects that require immediate attention. So, and just to give you a small example, even the support for the boards and commissions, that is the role of the city manager. So that's the Albion Building Authority, that's the Planning Commission, that's the Downtown Development Authority, Albion Building Authority. All of those boards and commissions require the support of the city manager, and those are not reflected in the job description. It's not reflected the work that those various boards and commissions are doing, including the zoning rewrite, comprehensive plan update, the redevelopment ready community. All of these things are responsibilities of the city manager. And that's just touching some of the highlights. There are grants that we've been very fortunate to receive, but they require not only reporting, but administrative work that needs to happen immediately. This isn't something that can wait a couple weeks until someone's been identified. And most importantly, how are you going to bring somebody on board in order for them to address these very pressing projects and activities? One of the things that we do have in place is a strong team. I have met every other week with Chief Scott Kipp, our treasurer, finance director Tom Mead, our director of public services, Jim Leonardson, and assistant city manager, Stacy Levin. They are intimately aware of all of the projects and activities that are ongoing and for the operations of our city. So any one of them will be perfectly capable of handling the transition until a permanent placement is identified and in place. So I would urge you, for the sake of the ongoing operations of the city, to consider an internal candidate, no matter what process you identify as best, to make certain that nothing falls through the cracks. There is absolutely no way in my mind, in my personal and professional opinion, and get everything going in a timely manner. By the time they become well-versed in what's happening here 2 to 3 months down the line, it sounds as though you'll be selecting another person. So you'll have 2 interruptions in the flow of business. So my recommendation to you would be that you identify one of the persons that I named. I would strongly urge you to consider Scott Kipp in particular, because he has served as interim on 2 occasions. And he is most familiar with the daily operations, but also he is the least taxed right now in terms of other obligations. Tom Mead is perfectly capable, but we're about to go into the auditing process. He's doing the year end, and he's in the process of trying to hire a deputy. So just in terms of his time commitment, I would be concerned. And Jim Leonardson, as you know, is working already on various projects, including the Superior Street, the water tower, and the wastewater treatment plant, let alone the daily operations. Stacy Levin is phenomenally talented in terms of project management and making sure that everything runs smoothly and keeping everything connected. So my recommendation to you would be that you appoint Chief Scott Kipp as the interim. But as you have already identified, that decision is ultimately yours. But first and foremost, I'm interested in a smooth transition and the continued operations of the city and what's in the best interest of our employees and the residents.
So one response, I guess the concern I have there is, to me, I'm assuming that there won't be a mass exodus of talent and department heads. So I'm assuming that whether an internal candidate is selected or an external candidate is selected, the department heads who work on those projects will remain and will be aware and keep themselves abreast of what's going on and needs to be completed in their area. So I don't see, you know, when I went through the, for example, when I went through the MML interim list, one of the interim persons was former city manager of Holland, for example. And the breadth of experience in terms of boards and commissions, in terms of the economic development, DDA experience, with you know, the impression I got from looking through the various resumes was that, you know, with people, you know, most of the time, and I'll say this, most of the time with the MML interim managers, these are people with 20-plus years of experience. So I think that that's less of a concern. So I really see a situation where if the individuals are still on staff, they're going to be aware of the projects they've been working on. We'll see them to completion. So,
Mayor, if I might.
yes.
And you are correct that MML, Michigan Municipal League, does have an interim list, and one of the individuals listed on there was also an applicant for the community to which I was selected as the new city administrator. But what they don't have is an intimate knowledge of this community, and let me assure you, Albion is unique in many ways. But I think it would also be unfair and unwise to assume that if on an interim basis, that if you do not demonstrate faith in your existing staff, that they are going to feel comfortable in remaining in their current roles, because we have exceptionally talented and committed department heads, and they aren't here for the money. They could take another position anytime, somewhere else. And I know they're actively being solicited. But they have stayed because they had a commitment to our community. So always be aware of the unintended consequences of any of your decisions.
Councilman Reed.
I tend to think the same way. It's just like I said before. They've been here, they've worked along with Cheryl, they know the things that are going on, they know the problems, they know the good things, and to just pick someone else who has got to come and even learn them before they can learn what they do and what needs to be done is a waste of time. When you could pick someone who's here already and continue smoothly to move along until you could get someone who's permanent.
So I think what Councilmember Spicer said earlier kind of bears repeating. So the council has no policy or procedure documented for interim selection. It's really the council's call, and so that's one thing. And the other thing is we're not determining tonight who the individual will be. We're just deciding, in the sake of fairness, and I define that as, you know, if we're committed to equity and making sure that qualified people have an equal chance at getting it, that we post it. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. So that's, you know, I'm standing by that. Councilmember Brown.
I passed. You said what I was going to say, basically.
Did you, Councilmember Spicer and Councilmember Reed?
So, Mayor, are we posting? Is it internal only, or is it just posting for internal extra?
What I'm proposing would be to just post the interim position. It'd be open to internal candidates. It would be open to external.
Hours till 10 o'clock on Thursday morning. If we do not receive input from an internal candidate, that we would then post it externally for a period of 5 days until the following Thursday to allow for external candidates. But if we get an internal candidate, we would then schedule that interview forthwith.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
A second.
Discussion on the motion. I still think we need to do both. So I'm going to vote no on the amendment, but is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? Okay. So, well, 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll do a, I'll just get a roll call, just to be safe.
What's the
Okay. This is to basically have it in, to cut the process in half, have it internal and external. With the,
To allow for, the language I'm asking is that we post it internally for the next 36 hours till 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. If we receive internal candidates, we interview those internal candidates and vote on the one that we want.
wait,
If we receive no internal candidates, then it gets posted for 5 days, starting with Thursday morning at 9 o'clock for 5 days until the following Wednesday or Thursday, and then we continue the process as originally outlined by our mayor. That is basically the recommendation that our city manager made, and I'm just asking that we consider that by voting.
so we could possibly end up having even more meetings.
No.
Yes, I mean, if we don't select
I can
majority.
guarantee you that we will get an internal candidate.
No, I'm saying if I know, okay. You can internal candidate, but you still have to, but you're assuming that someone would be selected. That's the issue.
And
So let me finish what I'm
Yep,
saying.
I'm making that
Let me finish what I'm saying. So the issue to me, it makes sense to do it consecutively. It really does, because it means you get everything and you make one decision. So,
Call the question.
yeah. Okay.
So
Councilmember Law,
we're voting on what Andy has on the table?
yes. As an amendment, yes. Which would be, again, like you said, to do internal and do external. The one question I do have is when would we meet to decide if there's an internal, if we get two applicants internally? When is the proposed meeting to make that decision?
We have to vote on this first before we do that scheduling.
And when's the deadline you're proposing?
I would say 9 o'clock on Thursday morning.
Okay, it's still.
Call the question.
Well, no, it's still discussion. The issue I see with that is we're not going to meet on Friday. So the first time we'll see that, maybe the applications or whatever will be sent to us on the issues we're still going to have to vote, right? And so the next meeting is Monday.
Yep.
Okay. And if whether or not that's successful, we're going to start the whole process right back over again for even more time.
Well,
So,
Point of order, please. I need to clear up something. On point of order, when a person makes a question, they have to get a second. When they get a second, you're supposed to vote to see if we're going to move based on that question.
no, amendments are debatable. So there's a discussion for amendments. So that's what we're doing right now.
That's not as I know, he called a question to a motion. He made a question to a motion, you're supposed to
Yeah.
get a second,
Yeah.
and then we move
Yeah.
forward, so.
Yeah, so I'm,
Supposed to go to his question.
I'm ruling on what you're saying. So basically, there are some motions that are privileged, like, for example, there's no discussion for an adjournment. If you amend the main motion to postpone, it's debatable. So an amendment is debatable, so.
I'm gonna leave it alone, but that's not correct. When you call a question, give him a second, and you vote and move forward. I will leave it alone, y'all do what you do.
No, that's a ruling. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember French.
Is that
What they're talking about? Well, I actually have to say that there
Did you have a, Councilmember Spicer?
I guess I want a clarification on exactly what is on the table. What are we voting on the motion that Councilman French?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we're doing is
Yeah, exactly.
my proposal was to have a selection process in line with what we do with other postings, so 5 business days. Once we've received applications from internal and external candidates, to review those and select 2 to decide between, which would mean another meeting next week. From what I understand, Councilmember French, he made a motion to amend that, and that was seconded, and we're discussing now. And that amendment basically is to bifurcate that process to have an initial internal posting until Thursday, close of business, and then the council decision, depending on what applications receive. And if that does not produce an interim manager, then start the process again, which would push it further back. So, Councilmember French.
So I'll provide a clarifying statement to the beginning of Thursday, not the end of Thursday. And also, regarding my other statement, which Councilwoman Brown so deftly deflected, my guess is that if we as a council do not approve of an internal candidate without having external candidate applications, it would indicate to me and the rest of the city that in fact it was the goal to have an external candidate fill this position. And so I would ask that I would like to call the question so that we can vote on my amendment.
So call the question takes 5 votes.
I understand that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so so what we're voting on now is to stop discussion. So if there are any other questions, this would stop discussion on Councilmember French's amendment. So, meaning that if you have any other questions, we wouldn't be able to answer them. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. So we are going to vote now on the amendment that has been put forward by Councilmember French. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Lawler,
No.
Spicer,
No.
French,
Yes.
Barnes. Yes. And Mayor Brown.
No, the amendment was not adopted. We're back to the main amendment, which is not the main amendment, the main motion, which is to approve a selection process that includes internal and external candidates, and for a period of time. I proposed the 5 days in accordance with what we've done for employees subordinate to the manager. So is there further discussion?
I have
Councilmember
a
Brown.
question for clarification. When you say 5 days, you mean 5 business days or 5 consecutive days?
5 business days.
Okay.
So it actually ends up being 7 days, actually.
So,
Councilmember Brown.
thank you. So, the motion you're proposing closes the window on Tuesday at what time?
We could say Tuesday by 5.
Tuesday, 5 p.m.
And is that for internal
Internal and external, yes.
and external?
Yes. So, just one question. Is that your only question?
Me? Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Lawler, Councilmember Spicer.
Could we make a friendly amendment to lessen the 5 days?
Yeah. do you have a particular
At least
timeframe?
Friday, 12 o'clock.
Okay.
I mean, I don't care what the times is, but I just want enough time that you get it all together, and it's just too long.
Okay.
5 days is too long, I think.
Councilmember Spicer, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I agree with Councilwoman Lawler that I think the 5 days is too long of a period of time, because then we have to review them and interviews and whatever. And I think we should shorten the application time period for the position M, and that the position will be posted internally and externally, and internal candidates will be able to apply for this position, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
So, I'm moving to amend the motion to say that the job is posted internally and externally, and the deadline for interested candidates is this Friday at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Yeah, so there's been a motion made, an amendment made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved in second. Is there any further discussion on that? So basically, it would be, so for my, if you had it, if they're due by Friday at 5, we would hopefully receive them. So let's say receive them on Monday. Well, if we receive them on Monday, we probably could have them by the meeting on Monday, and depending on how many, can make a decision maybe like to the 2, and maybe schedule just another special meeting to talk to the 2 and then make the decision there. So I think that could make sense.
A point
yes.
of clarification, so are you asking for the posting of the position to also be in the newspaper?
If we approve it this evening, it probably can make it in the newspaper, because I know that today's Tuesday. Usually the deadline's usually the deadline is Tuesdays on 5, but I know that they can usually get things in on Wednesday. So I think we could put it in the paper. We could put it on the website. Yeah. Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Dr. Mitchell indicated that that the current job description for the city manager is not complete. So, I guess we can talk about this at a later date. We will probably need to change this description to reflect other duties that she has been performing that are not included here.
Well, I think one of the things...
But for the purposes of this posting, we will be using this job description.
I would suggest using that, because that's what we have. I think, the charter says that for the manager and the mayor, basically, and other duties as assigned by council. So I think that covers those other areas where the managers had to work in. So, yeah, I would just change the wording, put interim on there. So,
okay.
Yeah. Councilmember Barnes.
I'm going to refer to item 7, capital letter A. Approve the selection process for interim city manager. I want to go on record as stating, if this selection process is chosen, I think we're sending a vote of no confidence to the internal administrative staff of the employees of the city of Albion. Thank you.
I would disagree. I think...
We're not supposed to debate that. Hey,
it's...
Point of order. That ain't what this is about. I went to the top. Point of order.
Yeah, we can
You don't
disagree.
need to commentate me. That's not
Okay,
what
no,
that's
well, I'm not.
about.
Okay. So I appreciate and I'm confident in the the staff and department heads. I believe I'm also a strong supporter of open and fair processes. So I don't think the council should be forced to choose between those. I think they're not exclusive. So right now, is there any further discussion on the motion to set the amendment? Excuse me, the amendment to the main motion to set the deadline for, you said Friday.
5 p.m.
Okay, Friday at 5, and then pick, I guess, finalists at the council meeting on Monday. Is there any further discussion on that amendment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote. And this is, again, for the amendment to the main motion to shorten the posting period and to, I guess, have a final selection at the council meeting on Monday. Clerk Domingo.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes?
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yeah.
Barnes,
No.
Reed,
No.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Okay, so we have a main motion now that has been amended. As it stands right now, the motion is to post the interim position for internal and external candidates with a deadline for finalists from the submitted resumes on Monday at Monday's council meeting. So, and then once that decision is made on Monday, we can determine a time for the final selection next week. Is there any further discussion on the main motion that is amended? Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll ask for a roll call vote on, again, the main motion.
State that again, please.
So what we're voting on, we're voting to approve a motion that will post the job for internal and external candidates. Resumes due by Friday at 5, and then once the resumes are received, the council will make a decision on this coming Monday, which is a regular council meeting, of the two finalists, and we'll set a time to select between to select between the two finalists next week. So that's the motion right now, the main motion that we're voting on.
Is that gonna give us enough time to see them and study them over?
I think, yes, if we get them on Friday, they can probably email it to us so we have the weekend. And the council meeting will make a decision between the top two, and we can set a time that week to make that final determination. And I'm sure that would include having the persons in our presence. So, okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes?
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Barnes,
No.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. The motion that was amended was approved. Everyone is here. Public comments. Persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum. Please state your name and address. Is there any public comment this evening?
My name is Julia Mulkey. I live outside of Albion, but this is my hometown. I support it with my money, I support it with my time, and I support it with my efforts to promote it. I have a vested interest in this place. I have a couple things that are bothering me about this, and it starts with, at the point you bring in a new person, no matter how qualified they are, you can't expect them to hit the ground running. There will be a learning curve. You're going to hit those bricks on Superior Street, that nice wavy pattern, you're going to repeat it in the city manager position. Things are going to get dropped. Deadlines are going to be missed. We're going to lose out on funding, on potential, because you don't want to take the short term right there. And as far as being fair and equitable to everybody, I don't care about outside sources. They don't have a vested interest in this community like we do. You should be fair to us, the people that support this town with their money, with their time, and with their efforts. That's why internal is better. You're not talking about a long-term commitment, 2 months. But the continuity would be there. And that's what you need at this point of the game. You don't want to stop the momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments this evening?
Karen Yankee, 104 Irwin Avenue. I am a lifelong resident of Albion, and I just need help in understanding what has just happened. We've made a mountain out of a molehill. We have such great things going in Albion, and the continuity. If we bring an external source in, where is the common sense? I just don't get it. We need to stop being political and think about our city of Albion as one unit. Thank you.
Juanita Solis Kidder, 1211 Edward Street. I am in the same mindset of your community. Where do you come from not doing something that is so simple and has more validity than trying to get an outsider to learn something completely new to them about our community? This is Albion, this is us. We are the ones paying the taxes. We are the ones elected our officials. And you are not doing what the community at large would want you to do.
Is there any further comment? Oh.
Tired of coming up here just to say that you guys have missed the boat once again. You have internal people who are excellent. Scott Kipp has already done it twice. Like both of these ladies said, it's a short-term thing. Somebody from the outside is not going to know what Cheryl does in the least. Why don't you take someone from inside that's been here, that knows what's going on? Why do we want somebody from the outside who doesn't even know Albion? I think you've made another big mistake.
Oh, can you repeat your address?
917 Lucy Drive.
Thank you.
Bill Dobbins, 15901 East Michigan Avenue, Albion. You know, it's interesting that Friday afternoon we all sat, I think almost all of us sat in the same room and heard our governor speak and how important it was to work together. Unfortunately, City Council and Mayor have shown us how not to work together. We have qualified people that were willing to do this for 2 months, and we've just given the community a perfect example of why in the long run we're really not going to be able to get it done. Lack of leadership, lack of trust, lack of believability, lack of transparency. It's all here. And we had the audacity to sit in that room and talk about how we're going to work together. 3 days later, this is what we got.
Is there any further public comment? Oh.
Mary Humphreys, 311 Washington. It seems to me there are people here that don't like changes. And I think anything could be changed, anything can be new. And some of these people need to understand, you don't do this all the time with the same people. You need to have change. So I think it should be some change done. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Okay. Councilmember Barnes.
What meeting was y'all at? I wasn't there? What meeting?
We can discuss after the meeting.
My bad.
Okay. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
I wasn't there. I didn't agree with you. That was y'all get. That's why I ain't come.